This con-
Let us talk about accounting cycle execution with a business process. Those who are not talking can be on mute, please. Unless you have any question, please be on mute. Okay, let's try to understand what is the business process and how this business process is executed in accounting. You can switch off your camera, whoever has switched it on. So normally when you talk about any business process, first you take any business process or you take any organization, any company that you are aware of or that you are comfortable with. There is no rule that you should take any existing company or you should take a big company. It is not like that, because now our intention, our target is to understand the basic accounting you are able to draft in the Excel sheet to find out what is the net financial impact, what is the accounting cycle that is executed. Once we are able to understand this, same thing as it is will be used in your SAP. For this, what I'm going to do, I will take a simple business, let's say anything like trading business. I'm going to take a trading business. Let it be any trading business. I'm just writing it as a trading business, but this can be any trading business wherein you are purchasing and then you are selling. So for any business to happen, for any business to initiate, you need something called capital. First, I am going to write something called capital. Next, once you have capital, I need to have a premise or I need to have a shop, shelter to run my business. To take any shop for rent or to take any building or premise for a rent, first I need to make some advance payment to the landlord. So I will tell that I am paying some advance rent. First, I need to make sure I have some funds available with me. Based on the available funds, I am going to take a shop for rent to run my business, for which I need to pay advance rent at the beginning, assuming I am paying advance rent. Once I pay the advance rent, first thing that I will do is I will purchase some material. I will purchase some material. I am only going to write purchase, assuming that I am purchasing something. Whatever I purchase, I need to make sure I am selling it. So I'll write sales also. So far, whatever you have written, you have started your business. To start the business, you need capital, and then to run your business, you need a shop for which you need to take it on a rental basis. Anybody who gives you on rent will request some advance. You have given advance rent. Once you have the capital, which means amount available with you, you have a shop premise available with you, you are going to dump in the material that you are going to sell to the customer. You purchased material that you want to do business with, and then that is nothing but your purchases. Whatever you purchased, assuming you are selling it to the customer, we have written sale. Now during the month there are certain things that you cannot avoid, which means if you want to run the business, you need some basic furniture in your office, in your shop, or wherever. You need some basic furniture. Let me write some furniture, because I cannot stand and then do my work, and I cannot keep my customers standing if they walk into the shop. So I need at least some chairs, tables to be arranged. I am simply calling it as furniture. I need to buy certain furniture. Next one, I need some computers. At least one computer to record day-to-day transactions is required. Next one, assuming I need one printer also to give bills or whatsoever, I need a printer. And if I am running the shop, now I will have to put certain electrical items on my shop, like light, fan, etc., for which there will be something called electricity bill on a monthly basis, which you cannot avoid. There are certain operating expenses which will occur on a monthly basis, irrespective of your business. Whether you do business or you do not do business, these operating expenses are common. I'll simply put, let's say, electricity bill, I need to pay, rent I need to pay, okay, rent I need to pay, electricity bill I need to pay. Let's say I'm talking about some other expenses.
Manpower.
I will talk, yeah. So I need at least 1 or 2 employees to work with me to whom I need to give salary. So let's say I also write salaries. I need to pay some salaries. Any other mandatory transaction that is possible in the first month of your business. In the first month of business, any other mandatory transaction without which you cannot run the business. Because if you write everything, it will become a huge list. Our intention is to understand the logic, understand the concept, for which limited transactions which are mandatory is more than enough. Let's say these transactions are fair enough, sufficient for us to proceed further. Now, you need to have certain assumptions before we proceed. We need to have certain assumptions before we proceed. Let's assume that all are cash transactions. Let's assume that all are cash transactions. Clear? Now, when you are writing all the transactions are cash transactions, if you are bringing in capital, you need to mention that capital is brought in by cash. Wherever you are spending money, you are spending a cash. Wherever you are receiving money, you are receiving a cash. In short, all the monetary transactions or all the financial transactions are dealt with cash. This is your assumption that you are keeping in mind. Now, first thing that we need to put the amount here. For everything, you need to write some amount. If I have to write some amount, what am I writing here? Is this a business transaction or am I writing the trial balance? What am I writing here?
Business transactions.
We are writing business transaction. When you're writing business transaction, first you need to understand what you're writing. If you're writing a trial balance, the way you put the number is different. If you're writing a business transaction, the way you write the number is different. If our intention is that we are writing the business transaction, you are free to write any number that you want. You can put any number that you want. Whatever the number you put, your accounting will work out. If you are considering this as business transaction, if you are considering this as trial balance, you cannot put whatever the number comes in your mind, because you need to make sure sum of all the transactions will become zero. That is the checkpoint for your trial balance. Now we are very clear, this is not the trial balance, this is the business transaction list, for which, let's say, I will assume that I have started my business with a capital. Let's assume that what will be the amount that is needed toward it to do a trading business. How much amount do we need? Can I do business with 100?
Good luck.
Let's say I will take 100,000 or 1 lakh. Assume that I took 100,000. Just an imaginary figure, we can take any number. When you practice the similar one, you can take any number that comes in your mind. Let's say now when you write the first number as 100,000, you need to keep this 100,000 in your mind to write the next numbers. If you have started a business with 100,000, you are not going to pay 50,000 for advance. Am I correct? You will not spend huge amount or half of your amount only for the rent advance. Yes or no?
Yes.
Correct? Because you need to operate, you need to pay, or you need to run your business for different things. You need money to be available in your hand. Let's say before you write advance rent, let's assume that rent per month that you are going to pay is somewhere around 5,000. Since you have taken 100,000 as your investment, as your capital, your business is also small business. Correct? If I take 100,000 as my capital, I should keep in my mind that this is a small business. So for small business, let's say I am paying 5,000 per month as rent. Assuming if you are paying 5,000 as rent, your owner or your landlord is asking 2 months rent as deposit. If I have to deposit a 2 month rent, what will be my advance rent? If I have to deposit 2 months rent, what will be the advance rent?
10,000.
Advance rent should be a 2 month, 2 times or 3 times.
10,000.
10,000. Right? So we need to understand how, on what basis we are writing each number, because it is not about understanding the accounting entries, it is about understanding the process. Next, let's say from 100,000, you have spent 10,000. This 5,000, when you will be spending, at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month?
End of the month.
End of the month.
This 5,000 you will be spending at the end of the month. Now, at this stage, what is your available amount in your hand?
90,000.
90,000. Let's say out of 90,000, you have purchased some material for 50,000. Let's say out of 90,000, you spent 50,000 for purchasing the material that you are going to sell. Let's assume that you sold everything, whatever is purchased during the month, completely sold. There is no closing stock. Because we are not getting into the detailed of your accounting, we are going to look at from the high level point of view. If you spent 50,000 for purchases, if you wanted to gain profit or if you wanted to get profit, what will be the sale value? It should be more than 50,000 or less than?
More than.
More than 50,000.
It should be
More than
more than 50,000. Let's say I sold it for 75,000. Let's assume that we sold it for 75,000, and in the shop we are also assumed that you need certain furniture. After spending 50,000, furniture you need at the beginning of the business or during the end of the month?
Beginning of the month.
Beginning.
At the beginning of the business unit. At the beginning, you are left with how much? 50,000 you spent for purchases, 10,000 you spent for advance. Out of 100,000, if you spent 60, you are
40,000.
left with 40,000.
40,000.
Out of 40,000, let's say you spent somewhere around 15,000 to purchase the furniture. You spent 50,000 to purchase the furniture. Next, if you spent 15 from 40, you are now left with 25,000.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, out of 25,000, let's say you purchased a computer for 10,000. Just imaginary figures, don't practically relate. 10,000, we don't get a computer in that way. Just an imaginary figure for us to understand. Let's say printer. So if you from 25, if you spend 10, you are now left with 15,000. Out of 15,000, let's say you spent 3,000 for printer. Now electricity bill, rent, these things are paid at the end of the month, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now let's say electricity bill you paid around 500, rent you paid 5,000, other expenses let's say some 800, salaries assuming you paid 8,000. Let's say this is what the transaction that we performed during the first month of your business. Considering these transactions, now you are more interested in finding out whether you got profit or you got loss. Agree?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Even if you normally do a business, these are the practical things that are bound to happen. Yes, no?
Yes.
If you consider a small business, these are the transactions that you probably will have to do it. Assuming these transactions we have done, now you have got a business transaction listing. Based on the business transaction listing, you need to start your accounting process. Your accounting started process begins from writing accounting entry or journal entry. To write any accounting entry, to write any journal entry, you need to record a debit and a credit. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We need to record a debit and credit. So here I'll put business transaction and here I'll put accounting entry. Let me insert one more. And accounting entry, you need debit, you need credit. And for accounting entry, let me take another color. Let's say I'll take accounting entry, debit and credit we have to write. Now our assumption is everything is a cash transaction. If everything is a cash transaction, if you're talking about capital, what will be the accounting entry?
Cash account debit to capital account credit.
We need to debit cash account, we need to credit capital account. Cash will be debit, capital will be credit, right? Now amount will remain the same. I'm not writing the amount again. Okay, amount will remain same. I'm not writing the amount for debit and credit. This is the amount that we are going to consider. Next one, if you pay advance rent, what will be the accounting entry?
Advance
Advance rent account debit to cash account.
cash account credit.
Right. Advance rent account debit to cash account. If you make any purchases,
Purchase to cash.
Purchases to cash.
Purchases
it will be purchase debit, cash credit. Right. If you do any sale,
Cash account debit out to sales account.
sales account credit.
cash debit, sales credit. For furniture purchase,
Furniture
Furniture account
debit
debit
to
out to
cash
cash
account.
account.
right. For furniture, furniture will be debit, cash will be credit. For computer purchase,
Computer account debit.
Computer account debit to cash.
Cash account.
computer account debit, cash account credit. For electricity, sorry, for printer purchase,
Printer to cash.
Printer account debit
Cash.
to cash account credit.
printer debit, cash credit. For electricity bill,
Electricity bill debit.
so electricity is debit, cash is credit. For rent,
Rent to cash.
Rent account debit.
To cash.
rent debit, cash credit. For other expenses,
Other expenses debit cash
to
credit.
cash.
other expense debit, cash credit. For salaries,
Salary to cash.
Salary account
Cash.
debit to
salaries debit, cash credit. Basically, these are the accounting entries that you will be recording if you want to record this in accounting. Is this clear?
Sure.
Right. Now, assuming you have to do this in SAP, assuming you have to do this in SAP, are we going to write the same accounting entries or are we going to do something different?
They say
Same account. Same.
If you do it in SAP, you are going to record the same. You will have to take a cash account debit, capital account credit, same amount. Everything remains as it is because we are talking about accounting. Accounting, if you write on the Excel sheet, it remains the same. The same accounting, if you do it on SAP, it remains the same without any changes. If there are any changes, you change your SAP. If there are any changes, change something in your Excel sheet, but do not change accounting. Correct?
yes, sir.
Now, these are your journal entries, in short, accounting entries. Once you prepare the accounting entries, you need to prepare ledger accounts. You need to prepare ledger accounts. Normally, when we talk about ledger accounts, we will be talking about each account closing balance. Correct? When you talk about ledger account, you are talking about every account closing balance. Now, if you look at each account from the debit side, each account from the credit side, are there any accounts which are repeated more than one time?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How many accounts repeated more than one time?
Cash account.
Cash account.
Cash.
Only cash account repeated more than one time. Except cash, everything is appearing only one time.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Huh? Now, normally what you will do, let's say, let me talk about capital account first. Because I'm not going to prepare all the accounts. I will write about capital account. In capital account, I will put debit balance. I will put credit balance. Look at the capital. Where is your capital on your accounting entry? Is it on the debit side or is it on the credit side?
Credit side.
Credit side.
Credit side.
Credit.
It is the credit side. It is on this entry. On this entry, what is the amount?
1 lakh.
100,000.
100,000. If your capital is on the credit, you have to put the amount on the credit side. If your capital is on the credit, you have to put the amount on the credit side. So your capital account has got a credit balance of 1 lakh. Now you need to close the account on the debit side. You need to close the account on the debit side. Sorry. You need to close the account on the debit side. You should also close the account on the credit side. On the debit side, do you have any amount or it is blank? Debit side, is there any amount or it is blank?
Blank.
Blank.
Debit side, it is currently blank. Now, where is the amount? Is it on the debit or on the credit?
Is it on debit side?
Amount is there on the debit side. Now, on the debit side, your amount is showing 0. Now, on the credit side, your amount is showing credit. Sorry, on the credit side, you find an amount of 1 lakh. On the debit side, there is no amount. In short, debit side, it is 0. If I have to close the account, whenever you're talking about any ledger, every ledger account must have two balances. One is opening balance, the other one is closing balance. Currently, your capital account is a fresh account. There is no opening balance. But during the month, whatever the entries you posted to the capital, you have to put according to the transaction, either on the debit side or on the credit side. Currently, there is one transaction on the capital, which is recorded on the credit side. As a result, on the capital account, you put the amount on the credit side. Since there is only a single transaction during the month for capital, it is represented on the credit side for 1 lakh. Debit side, there is no transaction. Now you need to close the account for the month, because at the end of every month, you need to find out every account closing balance. To find out every account closing balance, you must know what is the debit balance, what is the credit balance. We have got credit balance of 1 lakh. There is no balance on the debit. If I have to close the account, I need to make sure on the debit side also, I will bring 1 lakh. So debit side, whatever the balance that I am going to write, which will be 1 lakh. Correct? Debit side, I am going to write 1 lakh. Yes, no? Debit side, I am going to write 1 lakh. Now, though your transaction contains only one number, you have written 1 lakh 4 times. Why did you write 1 lakh 4 times? What is the first 1 lakh? The one that is highlighted in green, is this opening balance? Is this transaction balance? Is this closing balance?
Opening
Opening
balance.
balance.
Opening balance.
That is transaction balance.
There is no
This is
transaction balance.
This is a transaction balance because the amount is coming from the journal entry. If this is coming from the last month, then you call it as opening balance. If it is the transaction, if it is coming based on your accounting entry debit credit, you call it as transaction balance. This 1 lakh is transaction balance, and these two 1 lakh is what?
Closing balance.
This is called as what? This is your
Closing
account
balance.
closing balance. This is your account closing balance. This is not even account closing balance. This you simply call it as the account balance, not closing balance. Okay, you are going to take the total on the debit side, you are going to take the total on credit side. Only if you put total on the debit side, only if you put total of the credit side, you will be able to understand the closing balance of capital. Considering this, to make it equal 1 lakh here, there is a something shortage in the debit side, correct? Debit side
Sir.
there is less amount. Now to close this amount for 1 lakh on both the sides, I need to put 1 lakh on the debit side where there is no amount. This debit side 1 lakh, whatever I put, if I put yellow, what is this yellow balance called? 1 lakh.
Closing
Closing
balance.
balance.
This is called as closing balance. Now if you look at the capital account, your capital account, should we say shows credit balance, or we should say capital account shows debit balance?
That's a credit balance
Capital account is showing credit balance. Why?
because that's what the money we brought in the business.
Yes, that is one reason. The second reason is always you should go by the reason number 2. Credit side is more than debit side. If credit side more in your account, it shows credit balance. If debit side is more, it shows debit balance. Clear? If you look at the account, you should look at the total of debit side. You should also look at the total of credit side. If you find the total of debit side is more, your account contains debit credit balance. If you see debit side is more, your account shows debit balance. Credit balance means credit side is more than debit side. Debit balance means debit side is more than credit side. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We say
Means credit
debit
side is
balance.
real, debit side is virtual, right?
Yeah, I'll put credit balance. If I write debit balance, I'll simply put debit is more than credit. If I say credit balance, I mean credit more than debit. Correct? In this capital account, when you write from the transaction, you have written only this. When you have written only this, you have balance only on the credit side. If your credit is more than debit, then you get credit balance. Correct?
Yes,
If your credit is more than debit, you are going to get credit balance. Credit balance will always reflect on the debit side. Credit balance will always reflect on the debit side. 1 lakh, I have to put this here. Credit balance will always reflect on the debit side. Debit balance will always reflect on the credit side. A little tricky, but you need to remember, you need to understand. Okay? Otherwise, it's very easy to get into confusion state in this area. If you are not clear with this, any account that you look at in your SAP, that will lead to the similar confusion. Now, wherever you're having one accounting entry for a particular GL account, you are going to write the same account balance as credit balance. In short, if I look at the accounting entry, my capital account is appearing only one time. This is appearing on the credit side. I will simply say capital is showing credit balance. Agree with me?
yes, sir.
Similarly, if I take advance rent account, I will say advance rent account shows debit balance. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
If I say purchase account, I will say purchase is showing a debit balance. If I talk about sales, I will tell sales shows the credit balance because there is only one accounting entry for sales. In that entry, your sales is credited. If sales is credited, sales will show credit balance. Now, out of all these accounts, there is only a single account which is debited and credited more than one time. That is your cash account. So what I will do, I will prepare cash account alone now. I will prepare cash account. In the cash account, let me take debit and let me take credit. First, what I will do, wherever I have cash, wherever I have cash, I am going to highlight cash debits. So here I have debit on the cash. Let's say I'll put for all the cash debits blue color. Credit, I'm not putting anything now. Here is your cash debit. Next one. There are only 2 debits in the cash, correct?
Yes, sir.
There are 2 debits in cash. Now the remaining, wherever you have credit, let us put a different color. For cash credit, let's say I put orange color. Now everywhere you have cash. All this I will call it as cash credits. All these things I will call it as cash credit. Clear how did we identify or how did we separate cash debits, cash credits? I just
sir.
looked at the accounting entries. Wherever I found debit side cash account, I put blue highlight. Wherever I found credit side cash account, I put orange highlight. Next one, on the debit side, I am going to take cash account balances. Debit, we have taken blue. I'll simply take the sum of these two. 1 lakh plus 75. Total debit cash is 175,000. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So I am going to write 175,000 on the debit side for cash account. Similarly, I need to find out what is the credit balance on the cash account. I am going to select only the orange highlighted records on the Excel sheet. If I select only orange highlighted, I got a number 102,300. 102,300. Correct? 102,300. Let me put this number on the credit side. 102,300. By looking at this, which side is more, debit or credit?
Debit.
Debit.
Debit side is more. By looking at debit side is more, can we directly tell the cash account shows debit balance?
Yes.
Yes.
Cash account shows debit balance. Now, how you will find out what is the cash account debit balance is based on the difference. You will have to deduct the difference from 1,75,000. If you deduct the credit balance 72,700. If I put this missing figure or balance figure 72,700, this amount will match. Correct? Now cash account closing balance is how much?
77, 72,700.
72,700. This becomes your cash account closing balance. Clear? This is how exactly SAP also calculates ledger account balance for every account. This is how SAP also calculates ledger account balance for every account. Now there are 2 reasons. There are 2 points when you prepare this ledger account. Point number 1, you prepared a ledger account by taking individual transaction that took place in that account. If you talked about cash account, we took all the transactions wherever cash is involved on the debit side and on the credit side. Correct? While preparing the cash account, we took wherever cash account is available, both on the debit side and on the credit side. Similarly, when you are preparing the report from SAP, SAP also is going to the same thing. SAP will also take all the accounts into one report. SAP also will take all the accounts in one report where it is going to debit and credit accordingly. Okay. Now, when you are preparing the ledger reports from SAP, you have got 2 reports. Everybody must have heard line item report. Anybody heard line item report in SAP? The term called line item report.
Yes, yes. GL line.
Right? You would have heard something called line item report. You would have also heard something called balance report. So there are 2
GL
reports in
balance.
SAP. One is your line item report. The other one is balance report. If you are talking
No,
about a
sir.
line item report, if you are talking about balance report, you are talking about finding out the closing balance in the particular month or in a particular account. Same thing SAP will also do. SAP will also tell you, if you pull the cash account, it will tell you total debit in the account 175,000, total credit in the account 102,300, and the closing balance or the account balance is 72,700. Similarly, for every account, SAP also will perform the same activity that you are doing here. The only difference is we are doing it manually, SAP will do it automatically. You are doing it manually, SAP will do it automatically. That is the only difference. Otherwise, the way it is performed manually, the way it is performed in SAP, exactly the same based on the same logic. Let's assume that the entries are posted, ledger accounts are prepared. Since you have all the accounts only one time, the same account will show the same balance. Okay, after preparing ledger account, after preparing a cash account, what next to be prepared according to accounting?
TB.
After journal entries, ledger accounts, you will have to prepare TB, which is nothing but trial balance.
Trial bill.
Let us prepare trial balance. When you prepare trial balance, let me write account and I will write debit, I will write credit. Account, debit, credit. So what I am going to do here, I am going to take all the accounts from the debit side, I will put below the account. What I did, I took all the accounts that were appearing on the debit side, I put below the account. Next thing, I will be taking all the accounts appearing on the credit side. Clear? I will be taking all the accounts appearing on the credit side. These accounts also I will put below this. Now what did I do? I have taken all the accounts. Correct? I took all the accounts now. In trial balance, are we supposed to duplicate the account or we are not supposed to duplicate the account? Can I duplicate?
You're not supposed to duplicate.
Alright, in trial balance, the account is not supposed to be duplicate. Since your trial balance is not supposed to have any duplicate record, that is why before trial balance, you have prepared something called ledger account. You prepared something called a ledger account. Wherever your account is duplicated, all the duplicate records are considered in the ledger account to find out one single closing balance. Correct?
Yes, sir.
If cash is appearing 10 times, you are not supposed to write cash 10 times in the trial balance. Cash is one account. One account should have one balance, either debit or credit. How you are going to calculate this one balance? By preparing a ledger account. By preparing a ledger account, you are going to figure out what is the closing balance, either debit balance or credit balance. So all the multiple lines or all the multiple records that you are able to see for a particular account are already taken care in the ledger account to figure out or to find out closing balance. Correct? Now what I am going to do, I am going to select all the accounts. I will remove the duplicates from this. I'll select all my accounts. I go to data. I will be removing the duplicates from here. So I'll just select from the current selection, remove duplicates. Continue. 10 duplicates are removed. There are only 12 unique accounts now. 10 accounts are removed. Only 12 unique accounts are available. Now we need to find out what is the closing balance in cash. For cash, we prepared a separate account to figure out closing balance. How much we got cash closing balance?
100,000.
Cash closing balance.
Oh,
Like
72,700.
72,700. This is your closing balance. So it is debit balance or credit balance?
Debit balance.
Debit.
Debit balance. If it is debit balance on the TB, it will go on the debit side or it will go to the credit side?
Debit
Debit.
It will go to the debit side. So I need to make sure I put 72,700 on the debit side. So in trial balance, every account can either show debit balance or credit balance. It cannot show two balances. Clear? Trial balance will show either debit balance or credit balance, but not both. Next one, advance rent. Advance rent is how much?
10,000.
10,000. Now I think from here, not from here. Advance rent is 10,000. Let me minimize this so that it will be easy to copy paste. So I'll put 10,000 here. Next one is purchases. Purchase has a debit balance of 50,000. I am directly taking because for debit we put a different color. Next one, furniture. Furniture is 15,000. I'll put furniture on the debit side 15,000. Computer is 10,000. Whatever I am currently doing, all these activities are automatically performed by SAP. Printer. If you understand manual accounting, it is very easy to understand SAP accounting, because whatever you are currently doing, everything is automated in SAP.
Sir, actually, we need to put it in credit side, right? All these entries. When we are preparing
No.
the ledger account, so automatically these are coming in debit side of the balance.
No. If you look at this printer on your accounting entry, your printer is on the debit side.
When we are creating a ledger,
Only
Yes.
capital that's
When
not
you're,
credit.
I'm not preparing ledger because these are all one-time postings that you have, single entry. For single entry, this is how it will come. For capital, you have the entry on the credit side. For capital, you decided this is a credit balance. Correct? Credit balance will go to credit side of the trial balance.
okay. I thought whatever balance left out, right? Whatever credit balance, that will go to debit side on the trial balance.
No. If you are debiting in the journal entry, this debit will go into the debit side in the ledger account. This debit will go into the debit side of trial balance. If you debited journal entry, everywhere it will reflect as debit impact only. Debit will never become credit.
Okay.
Clear?
Okay.
Yeah. Next, electricity. It is on the debit side. I am going to put debit balance. Rent, other expenses, salaries. Rent, other expenses, salaries. I'll put this here. And last one we've got is capital. Capital, we got the balance of 1 lakh here. I'll take this 1 lakh. I'll put 1 lakh here on the credit side. Next one is the sales. Sales, we've got 75,000. I will take this as 75,000 on the credit side. In short, if I put everything in the number format, now let me maximize this. This is our trial balance. Now, what is the rule for preparing the trial balance?
It is 0.
When you prepare a trial balance, what is the rule?
It is 0 balance.
Everything should be 0.
TB
Debit
must
should be
show
equal
a
to
zero
credit.
balance. Whatever the debits that you have, you should have equal credits. What I am going to do, I am going to do a total for the debit side, and I am going to do a total for the credit side. If you do a sum, debit and credit, it should be 0. Debit balance is 175, credit balance is also 175. Now this is how you prepare the trial balance, but in SAP, when you prepare the trial balance, you don't put debit credit separately, you put a single column called amount. So let me put one more column here. I'll put in SAP. Anything which is debit will appear as positive number. Yesterday we assumed how SAP identifies debit and credit. Positive number is what in SAP?
Debit.
Debit.
In SAP, credit
Plus
number
and
is what?
minus figures.
It's
Nine.
just
Plus and
minus is
minus figure.
credit, debit. Minus for credit, plus for debit.
Right. I am going to put a minus for credit. Here also I am going to put a minus for credit. This is how when you pull the trial balance in SAP will show. It will not show debit separate. It will not show credit separate. We put like this for our understanding purpose. In SAP, this is how it is going to display. When it shows like this, if you do a total in SAP for your trial balance, it must be 0. Now it is 0. There is no balance left. Correct? If you see the total, it is 0. Now the same thing you will have to get from your SAP when you perform this. Next, after trial balance, what do we do?
Profit and loss.
Of
We will
loss
make
account.
P&L. In P&L, you are going to have debit, you are going to have credit. P&L, you are going to have a debit, you are going to have a credit. In P&L, what you are going to debit, what you are going to credit?
All expenses and incomes.
Right. So what I will do, whatever the expenses that you have, let's say 50,000 is an expense. Let us highlight expenses with a different color. Let me take all expenses into blue color. Any other expense? Purchase is an expense. Electricity, rent, other expense, salaries. These 4 are also expenses. Correct? So I will copy this. I'll put this on the debit side. Similarly, these things on the debit side. These are my P&L debits. Now on all my P&L credits, let me highlight with a different number, different color. What are P&L credits?
Sales.
You have sales. Okay, for P&L credit, let me take, let's say green color. I'll take P&L credit on the credit side. Any other P&L credit, or that's it?
That's it.
Now to find out P&L, same thing. You do a total for debit side, you do a total for credit side. Which side is more, debit or credit?
Credit.
Credit.
Credit. In P&L, what is credited, incomes or expenses?
Income.
P&L credit is income. If you look at this, your income is more than expenses. If your income is more than expense, you will get profit or loss?
Profit.
Profit.
Profit. Now your profit is difference between 75,000 and 64,300. It will be 10,700. Correct? So I'll put this 10,700 as profit. So I'll highlight this, let's say in yellow color. This is the profit. Let me put these things also in the number format. I'll put this a box. Clear? This is your P&L. This is the rough version of your P&L, whatever you are preparing. Next one, after P&L, you are going to prepare what?
Balance
Balance
sheet.
sheet.
Balance sheet. In balance sheet, you are not going to have debit and credit. You are going to have liability. You are going to have asset.
Balance sheet.
Now, always you need to remember whenever you prepare balance sheet, in short, whenever you are talking from accounting point of view, you should always represent the number either in positive or negative format only. Because only when you do manual accounting, you are going to write number with DRCR symbol. But when you are on any application, especially when you are on SAP, there is no concept called DRCR. You will be identifying it based on the amount field. If it is positive, debit. If it is credit, negative. So this is the thumb rule that you need to remember. Don't just like that read the number. Read the number along with the sign, whether it is a positive sign or a negative sign. Now in liabilities, what do you get? Balance sheet liability, what do you get?
Capital.
You will get capital. What is the value of capital?
1 lakh.
1 lakh.
1 lakh.
1 lakh. Okay, so let me put a different color for liabilities. One lakh. Any other liability apart from capital?
Profit.
Next thing is your profit. Whatever the profit that you get on your P&L, that will be transferred to your liability. Now, is this profit or loss from your P&L?
It's a profit.
Profit.
It's a profit. Profit shows debit balance or credit balance.
Credit balance.
Profit shows always credit balance. Credit balance is positive number or negative number.
Negative
Negative
number.
number.
So when I put profit here, should I put 10,700 positive number or 10,700 negative number?
Negative number.
Negative number.
10,700 negative number I need to put. Right. So this is my profit. So I'll put this yellow color here so that you can relate this 10,700 with this. Next one. On the asset side, what do we have? So
Cash.
whatever is
Cash.
highlighted in the other color will become your asset. Cash and then advance rent. These two you have.
Furniture, computer, printer.
Furniture, computer, printer.
Furniture, computer, printer, these three. If I take these three here, any other thing left over from the asset?
AJ, can I ask a quick question, please, just to clear
Nothing
me?
is
Maybe I'm getting confused.
Yes.
Um,
Go ahead.
I thought credit means cash out of the door. That means cash leaving our organization. Is that a correct understanding? When you say credit, that
That
means the
is
cash that's going.
correct only from one accounting rule point of view.
Oh,
So
really?
your point, whatever you're telling, is considered while writing the accounting entry, which is this. Okay, but for debit, for credit, you have three more rules. You have three
Oh, okay.
logics to decide whether it is credit. You have three logics whether it is debit.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was looking at it from a different perspective then.
Correct. So that's a common confusion. Slowly you will get out of it. So when we actually start the classes, so I'm going to explain the different examples. I'll explain you how you need to take your own example and then prepare like this. And the same number you need to bring it from SAP.
Okay.
Okay, so nothing is left over. What I'll do a total of my liabilities 110,700. Let me do a total of my assets 110,700. Is your balance sheet matching?
Yes, sir.
Your balance sheet is now tallying. Is there any complexity in this, whatever we have done so far? Anything you found complex? Anything you found is tricky, difficult, not able to understand? Simple, basic logics, basic fundamentals. If you stick to, you are able to draft this easily. You can even complicate the way you want it. Maximum what you will do, you are going to add 100 entries in this list. For 100 entries, you are going to add 100 accounting entries. Even if you add 100 or 1000, I am going to decide whether to debit or to credit based on these three logics only. correct? No matter whether you give me 10 to write or 1000 to write, I am going to write debit or credit based on these three fundamentals only. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
The number of entries that you are going to give me is immaterial to me. I don't care. As long as I remember these three, as long as I know how I am debiting, how I am crediting, I am fine with accounting. So I don't have to look at the number and then I don't have to feel uncomfortable, or I don't have to get nervous, because the logic is something on what basis you are debiting, on what basis you are crediting. If you remember that, by looking at the transaction, you can decide because of this, this will be debited, because of this, this will be credited. Easily you will be able to figure out. And based on that, you will be writing journal entry, you will be writing ledger accounts, followed by trial balance, P&L, balance sheet. The end result that you will decide whether your accounting is right or wrong based on the balance sheet. Your balance sheet must agree with asset to liability. If you check the asset value, the exact number must be represented as liability value. Correct?
I'm trying to understand how the sales can be a liability.
Which one?
You said sales is a liability. I'm trying to understand how sales can be a liability. Capital, I can
Sales is
understand
not a
the interest.
liability. Sales is an income. You are referring to this one? Which one you are exactly referring to? Sales is not a liability. Sales is an income. It's a revenue. If you look at this, focus on the credits first. Now, if you look at liability, if your liability is credit, it is a decrease in liability. Correct? If liability is credit, it is a decrease, it is an increase in liability. If your liability is debit, it is increase in liability. In short, if you look at any particular account, for example, if you take sales, what is the sales in this category? Is this P&L or balance sheet? Income or expense?
P&L.
Sales is P&L. Within P&L, this is called as your income. Now, if you normally do any sale, by default, your sale account will be credited or debited.
Credit.
Whenever you do any sale, your sale account will be credited. When do you receive debit in sales account? If there are any returns.
Yes.
Correct? I sold, let's say, for 100, but I got a return from my customer for 10. Now, I will not call my sale as 100, I will call my sale as 90. Correct? To put it in the right way, I'll put minus 100 and then I'll put plus 10. My sale is 90. Sales will always show a credit balance because sales is a revenue. Income always shows a credit balance. If you look at the accounting rule, according to nominal account, income is always credit. Correct? So these things you just need to read through one or two times, at least couple of times. Then you will start understanding why we are writing debit, why we are writing credit. Because these are all the fundamentals to understand the below points whatever we have listed now. Okay. Any questions on this, whatever we prepared?
So can you please send this Excel sheet to us
Yeah, I will
for our
share it.
understand? Yeah, thank you so much.
So now, once this is clear, Next, why we have listed all these things. Now, if you are talking about SAP FICO, you might get a question, why are you writing all these accounting entries? Why are you writing journal entries? Why did you prepare TB, PNL, balance sheet? Now, if I come back to SAP FICO here, let me write down certain points related to SAP FICO now. In SAP FICO, normally what you will do, let's say that you are learning SAP FICO or you started practicing SAP FICO. First thing what you will do in your SAP FICO practice, during your practice, what are you going to do first? In general, you are going to do configuration. Am I correct?
Yes.
So when you are learning SAP FICO, first thing that you do is you do the configuration. Based on the configuration, what do you do? After config, what you will do?
Posting
Testing.
transactions.
Posting
Next
the
thing
transactions.
that you will create master data. First you will do configuration. Based on the configuration, you are going to create master data. After that, you are going to create transaction data. Yes or no?
That's correct.
Yes.
After the transaction data, you are going to generate reports.
Reports.
Yes, no?
Reports.
Is this correct?
Yeah.
If somebody is learning SAP FICO, is this what they are going to do in SAP FICO or anything else beyond this?
This is correct.
This is what you are going to do. When you do configuration, let's say whatever the way you did configuration, let's ignore it. You have created master data. Be on mute if you are not talking. Okay, you have created master data. Let's talk about majorly transaction data. If you are practicing SAP FICO, you did config, you created master record. Now you are talking about transaction data. When you are talking about a transaction data, you are talking about recording debit, credit, accounting entry. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
When you're talking about your transaction data, when you are learning, you are going to post debit credit accounting entry. But most of the times, this accounting will not come into our mind, but we post debit credit. Agree? This accounting will not be in our mind. We will not be thinking about it, but we keep posting debit credit blindly. And when you're posting, whatever the amount that you are posting during your practice is a fancy number. Agree? Whatever number comes in your mind, let's say I'll keep like this 1000, 2000 random numbers I will put. Do you know why you are posting the entry for that amount while practicing, or whatever comes in your mind you will record during the practice? What normally happens? In general, whatever number comes in our mind, randomly we post the entries, or you post entries in a systematic way.
We'll put in a systematic way to match it.
While practicing, in general,
We post whatever comes in our mind.
Random numbers.
let's say you're practicing SAP FICO, are you going to write all the postings in a systematic way, or when you practice, whatever comes in your mind, any GL account you will randomly take, or you think that I am going to record this entry, for this entry this will be debit, this will be credit, I assume for this entry this will be the amount. In that way we practice, or we just like that practice whatever comes in our mind, just to verify if there are any errors or not?
We'll put in a systematic way, because the way you have just shown us to put all these expenses and incomes and all this stuff, if we put the random figures, how are we going to match the balance?
Correct. Now, if you put the random numbers, it is not possible to match the numbers. If you are not able to match the numbers, it is not possible to decide whatever we have done is right or wrong. Correct? We are able to practice on SAP, but we are unable to decide whether what we did is right or wrong practically. Agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Right? Majoritarily, this is the mistake that most of the people will do while learning, while practicing SAP. This common mistake that everybody will do, they just like that post the entries without knowing what they are posting, for what amount they are posting, and why they are posting the entry. If you look at their company code, if you open any account, if you ask them, can you explain your accounting, whatever you did in your company code? Let's check how many people will be able to explain. First thing that you have to focus is take one number like this. Take one number like this, anything of your choice, and then record the transactions. Same here, record the transaction. After that, you have prepared so many reports in your manual accounting. You prepared ledger account, you prepared a trial balance, you prepared P&L, you prepared balance sheet. When you're preparing or when you're talking about reports, during your practice or during SAP FICO, what reports are you referring to? What reports are we generating? What reports are we checking during our practice? Are we checking line item reports or GL account balance report? Yes. Are we checking trial balance? Are we checking P&L? Are we checking balance sheet? Are we sure that the P&L figure is correct? Are we sure that the trial balance figure is correct? Are we sure balance sheet figure is correct? Are we sure that how P&L comes from SAP? Are we sure how balance sheet comes from SAP? Right? These are the basic points that we have to start thinking right from the beginning, so that you will be on track. You will understand what is happening in SAP when you post any entry. That is why people normally call, I want a candidate who understands the business process. I want a candidate who understands the business requirement. I want a candidate who can judge, who can decide, who can guide the client. So these things are possible only if you are aware of basic accounting, only if you are able to understand the business process. If not, we are limiting ourselves only to the configuration, which is not going to help us becoming a consultant. By luck, even if you become a consultant, it will be difficult for us to survive. It's a one-time effort, it's a one-time sitting that you need to sit and then revise. There is nothing wrong in revising your accounting, because the fact is your SAP FICO is completely based, dependent on accounting. You accept or you don't accept, it is the fact. Correct? Huh? If you accept or you don't accept, that is the truth, that is reality.
Good.
Because in the upcoming sessions, we will be listing out different topics that are part of your SAP FICO. And everywhere you will be surprised to know, everywhere you will be talking about debit credit journal entries only. Because without journal entry, there is nothing called SAP FICO. Clear? Any questions on this? So what you can do is, you can make a simple example like this of your choice. Simple transaction you can take. Here we have taken how many? Only 11 transactions. You can even limit expenses. If you take one expense, two expenses, you can put only 6-7 transactions. Try to write accounting entries, try to prepare ledger accounts, try to prepare trial balance, P&L, balance sheet. Now when you are able to do it, when you are able to tally your balance sheet, P&L and all, you feel comfortable, you feel confident that yes, you are able to understand accounting, you are able to match the numbers. And this confidence will help you a lot when you're practicing on SAP. You will literally start enjoying the system and you will start playing with the system, because it's a number game. If you're talking about SAP FICO, it's a pure number game. If you're not able to understand how numbers are getting changed, it is very, very difficult for us to manage. Okay, any questions? Right, if no questions, let me stop the recording.